Hey, this is Allie Edwards and welcome to another episode of Craft the Story. In today's video, I am going to introduce you to a really simple idea that is awesome for getting more of your story told. As most of you guys know, I like to bring in as many words as possible into my memory keeping adventures. The words have always been an important piece of the overall of my overall scrapbooking adventures. And so recently, as I've been doing some cleanup here in the office, this is one of my favorite times of the year to do a big cleanup, go through my past kits, organize, break up kits, do that sort of thing. I have a video about breaking up story kits. That's one of our subscriptions that I will link below as well. But as I was organizing my cards, and let's talk a little bit about that. I feel like I showed another video about that as well, but I'll just talk you through a little through that. This is a box organizer from scrapbook.com for 4x6 and 3x4 cards. And so as I was breaking up some of my newer story kits, side note, if you are a Story Kit subscriber or Stories by the Month subscriber, what I usually do is I will tell a few of those stories first, right? I use the kit as the jumping off point, tell a few stories, and then I often break up the kit. So embellishments go to one area, cards go to another area, stamps go to another area. And this box here has some of the journal cards. And I categorize journal cards in 3 different ways. Number 1 are sentiments or quotes, and I'll show you some examples in just a minute. Number 2 are actual journal cards with space for words. And then number 3 are patterns. So sentiments would be things like these ones, right? Quotes, cards that have big quotes on them. There's no space for writing necessarily. They can be used as title cards. They can be used to support the stories that you're telling. So those are I've got sentiments. Then I have patterns, right? These are pretty much the 3 different ways that I actually design journal cards. So patterns are going to be full pattern cards. Often I will put a sticker on top or add an embellishment or some label stickers or something like that. It can become a home for your words. But what I want to focus on in this video are the actual journal cards, the cards that have space for a story on them. And most of these, again, are coming from either Story Kits or Stories by the Month kits. And when I'm designing them, I am looking for opportunities to invite specific stories. Story kits are going to have specific themes. Stories by the Month doesn't always have specific themes. It will have just kind of more general, something like this card, right? Remembering all the things with I want to remember. So these are cards that I have sitting in my stash from, years of story kits, right? Because I don't always use all of the different pieces that are included in the kits. But I have these and I've stored them, and especially for me, since I'm not doing monthly or an annual project life project, I was thinking about what is a way that I can use these journal cards that are there and inviting stories, right? These ones, some of them are very specific in terms of their story invitation, and other ones are more general. Like this one says, hello sweet brave soul. This one says together with a little bit of information. This one says, thanks for holding my hand through all this stuff. And then you could write about someone helping you. Here's the story. Transition looks like, transition feels like. Here's a currently playing, right? This is from a play story kit. So what are the things that I'm currently playing? That's might be one I threw down here. Here's one with observation. So these are a combination of journal cards from past kits. And as I was thinking about what's something I could do with these that isn't necessarily chronological scrapbooking, right? That was actually a recent topic that I did here on YouTube and on my blog, is non-chronological storytelling. So most of you out there probably have a collection of either 4x6 or 3x4 cards that you haven't used yet, right? They are sitting in your stash waiting to be used. So this is really a use your stash idea. And my idea here is simply this. What if you take a 6x8 album? This one I have was one that we offered for Week in the Life last year. It's not the album that I ended up using, but it's a blank album that I have here in the house. And what I'm thinking about doing is designating this essentially as a story card album. And so I put a bunch of 4x6 pockets in here, and I'm gonna right now just grab a couple of these, right? Here's one, remembering all the things. This one says some pieces of my heart. So I think I'll do this one and then the currently playing, and I'll identify some things that I'm playing. My thought here is that what if you have an album that just holds these cards? Maybe you don't even add photos. Photos don't even come into the equation in this. It's simply using the cards that you already have in your stash to tell a variety of different stories. There's lots of different ways that you could approach this. You could say, okay, for the next month, I'm gonna do one journal card a day. You could just start having that as a daily practice, right? You come over to your box of cards, you pick out one of the cards. Here's one from I think when we did the foodie collection, it says mealtime, a little story about eating, and I could just write a story right now about the ways that we're eating or what I'm eating, but using those as a jumping off point to tell random stories, right? Little bits of stories that are happening in our lives. And I'm gonna keep it super simple, which means I'm gonna handwrite on them. A couple things that I am keeping in mind and things that I wanna make sure I remember. I wanna make sure that I'm getting a date on there. So I will be using a rolling date stamp to do this. And then I will probably just use Stays on ink. And this is one of those things that you could put, maybe your kids are back to school now and you're spending some time in the car, or you are, and you're waiting for pickup, or you're waiting at sporting events or whatever. You could take a collection of the cards that are specifically inviting stories in from your life and handwrite on some of them. And they can be done at all kinds of different random moments in time. It could be you do one before you go to bed, or one right when you wake up, or one before you get out of the car, right? Looking for opportunities in our lives to tell these short little stories that can all come together into one bigger story, right? This story card album idea. And you can absolutely add in different, sizes if you wanted to do some of the 3x4 ones. I'm organizing them in the same way, meaning that I have the journal cards, which is, the ones that are actually inviting writing, and then I have the pattern cards and the sentiment. So that's how I've broken them up. But I'm gonna start just with 4x6 and simply inviting myself to do a few, right? Do a few at a time. Maybe I pick out 5 at a time and I respond to the prompts that are on there. Figuring out what would make sense for you to embark on this kind of project. And it doesn't have to be something that you do every day. Maybe it's once a week. You pick out a handful of cards and you sit down and you write some out. Maybe you already have some sort of a routine that's going on in your life where you could easily have a couple of cards available to you and just jot down a couple things. I love this idea for a couple of reasons. Number one, it's a great way to use your stash of products that you already have. You're not having to buy anything new. It's possible that you already have an album available to you, and maybe you don't want to use a 6x8 album, but maybe you have a 12x12 album or a 9x12 album that has some of these pockets in it. And it's getting you away a little bit from a couple things. One is it gets you away from feeling like you have to have a photo for everything. And it separates out storytelling from the crafting. And sometimes I think that's really nice, right? Many of us love the crafting part. I love the crafting part. I want to have that be a piece of my memory keeping adventures. But I also know that I have a lot of cards that invite a lot of different kinds of stories that I could bring into an album like this, and they can be random stories that are actually meaningful when you bring them all together. That's what I want to do, and that's what I want to invite you to do. And I feel like this is the kind of project that can look all kinds of different ways. Almost all of you out there that are watching this video probably have a stack of journal cards where you could make this happen. It's a great way to focus on the story first. And maybe sometimes you pick out a card and you're like, okay, let's see, the one I just picked is Finding Peace in the Chaos, which is kind of like a story that I'm always trying to tell because I'm always trying to find some peace in the chaos. But maybe you pick out one of these cards and you're like, oh, you know what? I actually do have a photo that I would like to add to this. So that you could add just a 4x6 photo, or you could take this and you could turn it into some other project, right? You are inviting yourself to tell a story, and it can be as simple as filling it in and sticking it into the album. So that is the idea that I wanted to share with you guys today. Super quick, super easy. The steps for you may be simply breaking up your story kits or going into your Project Life card collection, your card collection, and starting to organize them in some sort of a way that makes sense to you. Again, I'm doing patterns, sentiments, and then the actual journal cards that have space for writing. Give yourself permission to just jot a few things down and start collecting those, right? It's a collection that will build on itself, and over time you will have this really awesome collection of stories that you are telling about your life that are going into an album, and you've got a home for that as well. This is also one of those things that you could invite other family members to do. Maybe your kids come and they pull out a card, and it could be, let's see, pull one out here. This one says, just my type of story. And invite them to tell some kind of story about what's happening, like what did they do today, or what's some piece of their life today. Or here's one that says best times together, right? And here's some of your favorite best times. So you can invite other people to participate in your storytelling without it having to be a big production. All right. That's what I'm doing today. I'm sending out the invitation. I'm going to start this myself. I'm going to add a few little things onto these two, and then I'll do an update video on this in the future, sharing a little bit more about how my personal project is coming together, and I would love to see examples from you guys as well. All right, you can do this. Let's start with story. I'll see you back here next week.